This is a short video of the first group of portfolio assignments. After you watch this, be sure to read the assignments and participate in the discussion about these assignments there. And it's part of the discussion below here too. Let me start by talking about with a general reminder about how the major writing projects for this class are going to work. There are three portfolios, by which I really mean three groups of smaller writing assignments and essays that get grouped together. The first one, the one that we're working on right now, is a getting started portfolio, and it's just that. This is getting started. The academic research portfolio takes up the research you're working on now, and you'll expand on what the first portfolio does, and both with more research and with different assignments. This is also the portfolio that includes an assignment that is probably about the closest we're going to get to something that you might think of as a traditional research paper, but even that's not really a traditional research paper. And then last but not least, the Research Transform portfolio is sort of a reworking and representation of your research in different genres, especially genres that might leave the classroom. But one thing we're not going to be doing this semester is a traditional research paper, and certainly not like the sort of generic and kind of depressing 5-paragraph essay, 5-paragraph paper you might have heard of before. Maybe you did one of these in high school, maybe you wrote several of them, maybe you had another class where, for whatever reason, the instructor insisted on this kind of format. I'm talking about something that begins with an introduction, and the last sentence of the introduction is the thesis, and that thesis is divided into exactly 3 parts. Then the second paragraph is about the first part of the thesis, third paragraph is about the second part of the thesis, and the fourth paragraph is about, you guessed it, the third part of the thesis. This all gets wrapped up in a neat little bow in the final 5th paragraph. Now look, there are many problems with this. It's a very formulaic way of writing, and no one actually writes like this. You'll never find a 5-paragraph essay in the New York Times or a magazine, that's for sure. And I'll mention now too that I'm not too crazy about the term paper, but that's a discussion I'll come back to a different time. The point, though, is that none of the assigned exercises or essays exercises or essays are like this. None of the things that we're doing this semester are like this. So when you get to the assignments themselves, do not try to revert to this 5-paragraph format and, for example, turn in a mini research paper with 5 paragraphs as your topic proposal exercise, because that's not going to be right. Okay, so let's talk about the portfolio assignments themselves. And you should be sure to, of course, click on the links and read the details, because each one of those links has details about the assignments. The first one is a topic proposal essay, and in that project, you'll recap the brainstorming and pre-writing activities you did to come up with this topic. We'll get started on that part of it very soon. You'll also tell us more about some of the topics you considered but decided against, and you might talk about some of the initial research that you did. The second project is beginning of your annotated bibliography, which is basically a list of sources for your research with some information about those sources. I have an example of what this looks like on the assignment itself, but each entry on your annotated bibliography will have a citation, either MLA or APA style, and then an annotation, which is just a very short, brief summary. Along with that, each of your entries will also include a sentence about how this figures or doesn't figure into your research. You'll need a total of 20 different sources by the time you're done with this, and I should say at least 20, because sometimes people have more than that. But for the first half of this assignment, just the getting started half of it, you need to have 10. These can be from the web, from the library, newspapers, magazines, and so forth. I wouldn't suggest including an entire book unless you actually read the whole book, but chapters from books are okay. And it can be a mix of academic and non-academic sources, and we'll talk more about the differences between those kinds of sources a little bit later too. Now, once you get going with the annotated bibliography, what you're going to do is you'll select one of those pieces of research, an article, a chapter, something like that, as a subject for your short critique. In that short essay, you'll do a deeper dive into that article and explain what is good and bad about that piece of research to an audience of readers who haven't read it yet. Last but not least, you'll write a reflective essay where you recap the entire portfolio and explain how you thought this first group of assignments went, and also what you're looking forward to doing next with the next series of writing exercises. The main audience for the readers you should keep in mind for all of these writing exercises, and really for everything in the course up until the last portfolio, are the other people in this class. That's me, of course, but you also want to keep in mind your fellow students because, after all, they're going to be reading this stuff too. You're not writing for some kind of general reader out there. It's not some sort of, just kind of imaginary reader. It's us, it's people in this group. Also, keep in mind that you're going to be doing peer review sessions in each one of these exercises. I'll kind of read along a bit with some of these peer review sessions, but the part of your portfolio I'll be concentrating on when I start to give you my final comments and when I read your work more specifically is actually going to be the reflective essay. So this is one of the reasons why in the reflective essay, one of the things you're definitely going to want to do is recap what you did in the earlier portfolio exercises, since I won't necessarily have read those. Last but not least, be sure to pay attention to the schedule when the drafts and these assignments are due and when we'll have peer review and so forth.